Arnold Maliba is our guest host. He's a public policy analyst, and Boaz Waruku is an education expert. He's a strategy and policy advisor at Elimubora Working Group. We are talking about the transition from primary into junior secondary school and what we've seen so far and the challenges that our children are facing in school during this transition. We'll open up the phone lines at some point in this conversation to hear your thoughts as well as your experience. If you're a JSS parent, tell us what your children have been doing, particularly those in public schools, even those in private schools. Let's hear your experience. Siti, remind us the proverb, please.
We worry about a child, what a child will become tomorrow. Yet we forget he's someone today.
We worry about what a child will become tomorrow, yet we forget he's someone today. Boss, we were waiting for you to come. Now that you're here, Asante Sana, this proverb, please interpret it for us.
A child is a person today, but we are worrying more about who we will be or what he'll become
Tomorrow.
I think that proverb just speaks for itself, but maybe liken it to our purpose here on earth. Because here is a case where, we've just come from Easter. There's been a resurrection. And many of us are really highly spiritual and all that. I'm a person of faith. But we are largely more thinking and talking about the heaven, but failing to work the earth where we are here to make it better. That I would resonate with that and say it would have been good if then we looked at how do we improve things, the situations in education, in the healthcare, in just ensuring that people have something to eat, safety and happy around, socializing, just making that heaven here first before we reach that heaven. I think for me that is what I would relate to.
What do you think, Siti?
It's a very interesting observation and interpretation, yes. Extremely interesting. When you talk of heaven, you're talking about an aspirational destination.
Yeah.
And something that you can always anticipate and hope for and work towards. Okay, now, when you talk of education, it's similar because it's supposed to take you somewhere. Education isn't just there. Yes, there's a level where you can argue it's education for education's sake, but even that education for education's sake is for a purpose. So that the individual who's being educated becomes something, not just someone, something. They're already someone.
Yes.
That they acquire something they didn't have. Now, when you have the sort of transitions that we experience within the education sector, Arnold mentions correctly, the biggest budget item we have in this country is that sector. Okay? Which means there's a lot of money in it, simply put. Now, if you look at the focus that Kenyans as a people have for making profit, okay, without necessarily giving value for that profit, the education sector automatically becomes a target. So when we have this back and forth discussion, whether it is CBC, whether it's 844, how it's being implemented, the plans that were there, how they are scuttled and how other things come in, you cannot avoid asking the role that money and the profit element plays in everything. Because we have the Kenyan Institute of Curriculum Development. I keep saying, you cannot find a group of more dedicated people, more people who are more informed, people who know exactly what ought to be done than that group of people. They really know what to do. And yet it looks like what they know ought to be done is ignored.
But City, you forget one thing, that even as a society, we there's this evolution where there had, quote unquote, been a preference or an emergence of a preference for other curriculum. That other teaching systems, and everybody that can or is worth, whether it is salt in taste or gold in weight, was busy showing off. We also are treating education not as an enabler, not as an as a right, but also as a status. You know why people are moving around with guns, not necessarily because their lives are actually threatened, but as a status. So we also we are conflating things around how we confuse our social problems with things that should be systemic, things that should be serious. So probably we are finding a problem, policymakers who do not even understand how these things move.
Arnold, you're right. You know, let me tell you, as somebody who was actually taught education, who was trained as a teacher, all these things you see people playing around with, we actually taught those things. You are taught. You are taught. You are actually taught, and you know exactly what needs to be done. That's why, even when you bring in a new system, teachers will not find it difficult to figure out how to go about it, because you actually taught and trained to be able to be that flexible in thought. But you are right. You see, the question that I am leading to and what I want to ask is, the players, these so-called global partners who influence our education system, it is clear that it isn't for our benefit. It is clear, because if you have something which works and then someone insists that you must change it, why are they insisting that we must change something which actually works and is benefiting us?
What is this that was working?
The education system. The one before the 844, it was working.
And 844?
844 was forced to work.
Actually, as a product, probably I'll defend. Let's now get to where these guys were when they were trying to plan around this. That I have gone across Africa and also been lucky to actually work elsewhere in the world, and I can tell you that some of the most robust exports that we have, because that's what we have as a country, these 844 people you're saying that they were forced to work, they have jailed into the world economy and they are doing exploits.
Just say Kenyans are brilliant. I don't know whether it's because of the food they eat and everything.
But
the
not the system.
It's not necessarily the system.
No.
But it's somehow they manage to go through. Let me give you, I think what is happening for me, what has been elusive here is the philosophy that we have for education. I think that could be what you're leading also to. Why? Because when we nail it down and do key parameters, say education as a public good, is one that everyone is entitled to. Interestingly enough, the Constitution we have has already nailed that now. The Basic Education Act has already nailed that. All these instruments we've signed have nailed that. But our practice is at variance. If we say we refocus there and say that we will be able to ensure that education is delivered as a public good, free of charge to the parent or guardians or anyone, so that anybody from everywhere, a child born within this locality or any that is found within this region who appears to be less than 8 years, because those are supposed to be assumed citizens, then we say those ones are supposed to be provided with quality public education, provided at the public expense, financed by the public. And if that becomes then the bottom line, and then we start saying, as we are training and educating our people, I think you are talking about education for education's sake. That is also swallowed in there. Just being educated enables you to be a different person from one who is not educated, very robust, lots of exposure, the stimulated mind, the ideas that you interact with. And such a person would find his or her way around, would not be like any other person. So in other words, when we make education system, public education system, to work for everyone, and particularly for those communities that are have been isolated or marginalized and all that. In that case, then we'll be able now to start looking at, okay, so what is not working? If this person was evolving and being developed, it appears that when they land in a course to do engineering, those who are teaching them at that level find that they did not grasp some of this. Then that is a feedback that is taken back and that is improved. And that is why in education system, the 5-year review cycle is always there. In fact, if you go beyond 10, you know that you are eating stale food, for example. So I would suggest that in as much as there have been interference, there have been people who have been pushing for other agenda items and interest and all that. But we take the moment to recast our education system in a way that we know that what we want to do with the education system is also to radically transform even the psyche and the understanding and the socialization of Kenyans. Because through the education system is where you'd find the disciplined, well-learned, educated people who would not just be overlapping on the road. We would not be talking of Nairobi and all that. We are known for matatu culture and all that, because that is somebody who has appreciated the books and the learning they've gone through. They'll realize that you need to respect yourself first, and then the next one, and then the next one. So that kind of an education process would help transform and deal with a lot of the problems here. That person you'd not be finding the white collar thieves who are sitting or locking themselves up and saying, now there's another tender coming here. Can we put 50% for ourselves and the others? Because this is somebody who knows that all that money, I'm taking them nowhere. You're not taking them to heaven. Heaven doesn't require any money and all that. You only require those resources to improve the situation around this place for the young ones who are coming here today and the ones who are coming tomorrow and thereafter. So for me, let us get the opportunity. Maybe it is the education moment. I know within the constitution reform process, people used to say it is the constitutional moment. I think it is the education moment for me. It is the education moment because now this is the time we have to point out there are many ills in the society. If our education was right, we would be having half the cure. We can now start by reimagining and rethinking and saying, okay, those who wanted to have this CBC for legacy, CBC for tender and profit, CBC, all those things, all those interests, yes, those people will still be there. But as Kenyans, what exactly do we want? And as we say that, then I'll come to your question on our JSS in grade 7. They are there. When you come to the realization that the education system needs to help this community to heal, to grow and all that, the grade 7 students, we are giving them a broad deal. And this is a category that may emerge to be so bitter, they may think that everybody has offended them. They'll come out and start thinking or being creative on how they need to deal with us and everybody else. So how do we reach out to these people? Because the first term is gone. There's nothing which has been done. The second term, you're being told that now 30,000 teachers have been sent there. But I think the discussion about 30,000 not being adequate, even the multi-streamed schools and all that being totally a drop in the ocean. So what do we do? The ministry and the TSC have even tried to identify some teachers from the primary school who can join and teach. But then those are only 7,100 or something like that, I think, from the statistics that they themselves released. So even if you add, that is 37. It can still not even reach 2 teachers. So for me, I think we need to be, as a Kenyan, we need to just say, let us declare education as an emergency. When you do so, and then we say all the resources we have should be directed towards making it work. And making it work doesn't mean you have to stop lots of it. I think because right now there are so many things which are not working. How do we fix that those things work? But if we make education, we declare it an emergency, even for the next 10 years. I would even talk of for the next 20 years and all that, where education becomes a priority. Anybody thinking about the development in Kenya, even in parliament, when parliamentarians are talking, they are only talking
Number one
about
is education.
Everywhere that people are talking, it is education, because within that process, after the 10 years, after the 20 years, we will be able to see a little bit of the change that would require. That only requires us to discuss it outside of the gamut of politics. Because when you look at now, if you are to direct it and say, let politics dictate how we are going to mend fences, I think we'll be continuing to do injustice to the grade 7 students. We would not be helping them to evolve as confident and people who really love their country and feel the country has invested in them. They'll only be seeing, some of them now think they're the guinea pigs that have been used there for experiments, and nobody really cares about them. We need even to be looking at, where are these others who have just disappeared? Where are they? They did not. Did you see many of the embassies getting visa applications and some of them going out? No, they are here. So we need also to look for them and bring them back. And maybe something also which we require to say, as the leadership within the ministry is juggling with this, it is also helpful to be honest and just to say, on this we have goofed. And because we've goofed, how can we repair
How can we rectify?
Yes, because, admitting a mistake is part of correcting that which has been made. So for me, I would take that kind of a route.
So ministry says something is not going right here. We have made a mistake. Let's pause. Let's have a conversation.
Let's have a conversation, but not, you don't pause as if, because,
It's not like close schools.
No, you don't close schools because you have to rectify and ensure that some learning is taking place. But you must create really a process that is really going to enrich that education in a way that would transform as we move forward.
What's lost in this discussion often?
Yes.
Is the outcome. Because when you have a certain education system, whatever you want to call it, what you actually create is an environment in which learning takes place. There's the cognitive aspect of it. Now, this is where the problem comes in. In introducing this environment, you're infusing into the minds of these learners something that's going to affect them for the rest of their lives. You may not know this, but this is exactly what you are doing.
Yes.
Now, if somebody starts off a system or somewhere in between it is disrupted, and you have something which doesn't make sense, you really are causing more harm than you realize.
Yes.
You then introduce now a different concept called cognitive dissonance. Again, you may think it isn't important, but it is, because generationally you will have created a whole group of people who unfortunately looks at society in a very skewed way.
Yes.
Now, you may not think it is important, but we are seeing it happening now. When you have 8 million people who do not vote, what do you think happened for those people to get to a point where they feel, this thing is not important?
Yeah. But, even as you say that the ministry, the leadership could actually stop and then say that we have got a challenge here, and this is how we invite a different way of looking at it. I know he says we should not deal with this thing from the ambit of politics. It's something that should be dealt with completely divorced from that. Unfortunately, we are not able to do that.
Why not?
For the simple reason, let me answer. Because realities. One of the problems why we don't love the conversation around realities. Once this particular regime, the current leadership at the ministry, they could actually say the truth. But regime survival is important. That would be akin to them saying they are unable to do it, and how it is interpreted moving downstream would be a different thing. These guys, even if they are stuck, they will not accept.
Yes, which is better? Them admitting that they can't do it, or it being patently obvious to everybody that they can't.
You see, I spoke about Sosion just a moment. Okay. I spoke about siding with Sosion, that we rushed this.
So Sion went back and forth on this thing so many times. You have to ask where it was he stood. Do you know the number of times he said this and then?
But then, as an actor, as a unionist, what more would he have done?
A number of times, I think, when it came to CBC, Sosion would be part of the true north that one would be trying to get to. He had his challenges and all that. Many of these unionists have In fact, even right now, the problem you're having, if you find the unions, with the exception of UASU, the Kupet and the NAT, you'll be finding that for them, they discuss and look at it from the point of where will we be guaranteed or more numbers as members. And, you know, those kind of things. And that's why I said, okay, all these interests, it's okay for them to have those interests.
They have a place here.
It is, those ones will have a place. But where I want us to vacate a position you are stating here, that the government should not own up when things are not going right because of political survival. That is why I think we need to vacate that, because it's really off-putting and offensive to the Kenyans, and particularly when we continue to see a lie after lie after lie. You know, just the other day, when civil servants are already talking of we don't have salaries and all that, but then the leader of majority says we have been paid. You know this is not true, but so we should not be driving our processes on the basis of lies.
But he said our reality is
why I'm saying that
we have politicians.
So reality
and the decision maker
is lying.
The decision maker is a politician.
You see, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, this is that particular bit where we who actually grace the commentariat really sometimes run away from. That statecraft is much more. I know it is sad that we are subjecting a whole generation. That's 1 million kids whom we are testing.
No, it's more than 1 million.
Let's talk about the JSS.
Just JSS.
Just the JSS. So 1.25 million kids are actually being tossed around here. But the one constant you will not run away from is the place of politics in this. So I was actually just contributing to a point and saying that however noble that is, recently somebody tried to say the truth. See how things have actually fallen down. When the president showed up and told guys, the things I said I will do in 100 days are not possible. You give me like 1 year, I will be able to work around that. It's true, honest, straightforward.
No, it was not true, honest, straightforward as you're putting it. But there was an element of truth that was brought to bear in that conversation.
And there was an element of straightforwardness.
Yes.
It's still the same thing I was saying. So he was being honest that you cannot get a harvest in under 6 months.
Sorry guys, for me, let me tell you one thing. Yeah. Because when you say, if I sold hot air to you, and then now I'm telling you it was actually indeed hot air, then you're saying now I'm honest. At what point do I become honest? If I say, and that's why when I'm talking of education, let us first divorce the politics from it. Because the moment we get in there, it is a murky stuff. You would not be able to deal with the situation, the issues that we are talking about. Can we deal with this? And by the way, if we have a leadership that would focus there and even own up and tell Kenyans, guys, when you want to do that, that one can be done out there. But here, Kenyans of goodwill, you'll get a lot of support.
But you see, that's
many Kenyans
how
would
do you
listen.
bring that? If you look at it, look at what the president did. The president appointed some 40-odd people and called it the Presidential Working Party. Presidential Working Party on Education.
Who are
okay? Who are all players in the education sector at various stages and various levels. Okay? Those are you people in the education sector, coming to the country, asking us our opinion. Okay? Can we say that is divorced from politics?
But
can we say that the person who's appearing before the Presidential Working Party is not a politician, is the parent, is a student, is a teacher who's presenting their memoranda? Can we say that the people who are receiving these memoranda are not politicians? They are experts in the education sector or players in the education sector, whether from academia or from schools or from unions. Unions were not involved for specific reasons. All these people who are in this, can we say that it has then been divorced from politics? But at the end of it, the decision has to be made by politician.
But you're saying there's something here, because if I want really good ideas and I really am serious about having a solution to a problem, I would not put my friends Eric, City, Arnold to give me that, because that I can discuss with them elsewhere. I would open it up and allow the real stakeholders in the sector Not necessarily because they are supporting me, but even those who are vehemently opposed to my style of doing things, those people would be able to tell you, how do we do this? That multi-sector, okay, for lack of a better word, multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder and all that. I would think that with that kind of a thing, and we have a commitment that when we see a good thing placed on the table being discussed, and consensus is that this would be good for the country, nobody brings in the baggage of, okay, it will be profitable. To which sector?
Can I ask the question?
Yes, please.
How involved was the classroom teacher in all this?
That's why I'm putting them in a big picture and saying various stakeholders.
So we're talking about JSS, CBC,
yes,
classroom teacher. How involved were they?
I think through the last 6 years that people have been meeting, doing drafts, having conversations, public participation and everything else, I think teachers were part and parcel of this process.
Yes, they were.
The teachers, like other public officers and all that, yes, some of them have been, but also you talk of maybe the unions having represented them in all that, but we are saying there's a way in which, even if, because a process is as good as the drivers of that process.
Now that is politics.
See, I asked the question, how involved? I didn't say they're not involved. I asked, how involved were they?
You cannot expect a quantitative answer out of a qualitative question.
Not entirely true.
Because let's get here. You see what Mwalimu is saying here? Mwalimu is talking about, and you see that is now being oxymoronic. Mwalimu talks about politics being divorced from this particular process. But what he's actually raising here is actually an intra-sector politics now. That also is politics on its own.
Yeah, he's being political.
So and that's why I said that we are not going to solve this problem outside of our political realities.
Maybe I should have been more succinct and said, because you see the politics that we have now is the politics of you are with us or against us. You are for this or against that. That is a politics which, or you are that side or these people have been. That is the kind of politics I'm saying. Because everything, by the way, politics is life.
Yeah.
Everything, the life, even the way I put on whatever, how I talk and interact, even the way I sneer at people, that's highly political. So what I'm saying, I just wanted just to remove the element that we've had in the past, where people take positions on a critical issue on the basis of partisan interest and all that. That's what I was saying. But in terms of, because the coalition of ideas from all these guys, and ensuring that the stakeholders I'm referring to are the ones at the center, and they'll be able to dissect a good idea and say, for this one, bank. The second one, bank. The third one, bank. What is the plan of implementation? 1, 2, 3. What is required? 1, 2, 3. And nobody blocks that. We would be heading somewhere.
Okay.
In a country that loves filibustering like ours.
So let's take a break.
We can't take
Let's take a break.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
So the conversation continues with Boaz and Arnold on the education sector and what needs to happen. So you've come up with a good prescription. You say, first of all, can the ministry just say, all right, so this thing is the way it's going.
Yes.
Clearly we have a problem. Can we talk about it? What would they do? What should they do? Not just the ministry, but also our members of parliament and those in the national executive. What should they do to immediately correct the situation? So there's a long-term measure, but we need interventions for JSS. We need interventions for the grade 6s who are looking at JSS and wondering, my God, what's going to happen?
Thank you. And as you are topping that, you remember there are also some grade 7 who decided, let's register for KCP and all that, because we say we don't want to be here.
Yeah.
So in other words, it is agreed and accepted that there is a crisis in CBC, and particularly the transition to JSS. And when we say so, and if the ministry becomes honest and allows for that robust discussion, and then we start looking how do we fix it, because it would be fixed by different actors. The multi-stakeholders that I'm talking about, some of them are not necessarily in Parliament, but Parliament also has got a responsibility to legislate and ensure that the legislation they are to make, because I did suggest that we call it's an emergency, it's a crisis that we need to deal with. So they should be legislating in a manner to deal with such a crisis. When they do so, because it is the same parliamentarians who would be able to do financial planning, that's the budgeting and all that. Of course, you'll be told about public participation and all that, but I told you any process is as good as the drivers of it.
Yeah.
So if the people then, if these parliamentarians listen and agree that they would be legislating and they would be looking at the budget process, like now the budget for the next financial year, which is really on top gear, they refocus attention. They should not listen to those who are already saying that education has a lot of money. Because we are saying this one is a priority, and we're saying it is a priority, it should be a priority for a longer time than just the election cycles and such things. So in that case, the parliamentarians should do the kind of legislation. They should also, first, I think they'll also require a policy document from the executive, because also that is how they work. So this is also a case where through their committees they should be able to have the ministry and top-level ministry officials giving them a picture or an indication of what they want done. For that top-level ministry officials to get to the parliament, they should also be having that caucus with the multi-stakeholders to be told that in terms of immediate interventions, the mid-term and then the long-term. And the immediate, for me, should be dealing with how do we look, we have the 99 sheep. I said this one is just after the Easter. We have 99 sheep here. Let's go look for that one sheep which is lost. All these children of ours who are out there, that should be a priority that we get them back to. How do we get resources to finance the recruitment of more teachers, additional teachers and all that, and inducting them, because you would have to do very quick, rapid induction, and not telling you about 30, which would translate to 1.5 for numbers, but significant numbers that would be inducted. 2, 3, that the infrastructure which would be required in those schools, those become very immediate and all that, because we should not be told about the students will be walking to the next or the nearby secondary school or high school and all that. I think those ones are not solutions. So, and 3, I think intertwined within that, we should also be dealing with how the schools are managed and these resources are also managed. Among the things that I think a good system that would ensure an institution or a school, that a primary school is well managed, is where you also allow those parents themselves to see how do we spruce up what existed as a primary school committee is no longer. It is no longer primary school. It is a JSS and primary school intertwined. What are the procedures or the steps that we use, even if it is to deal with, say, procurement of the materials, the desks, and all that? Those are systems which are within that school. These are coming as a new thing, because this never used to happen. The primary schools, the kind of small monies they were using were just for operational issues. Now they are getting a little bit more money. But maybe even before I rush into saying how that money goes there, we need to revisit even the allocation that is being made of the 15,000 per student. And that should be immediately revisited. Why? Because I give you an example of the current transfer or allocation given to a high school student from the public coffers is 22,500.
In secondary school?
In secondary school.
Form 1?
Form 1 to Form 4. Each of them, per year. But those are people who are going to a school which is already established. But now a school which has nothing established, you are giving them
13,000.
15,000. So who say that? In fact, it should be more than the 22,500 to be given there. So in other words, we need to revisit that, because the costing of what was this money meant to do and to help and all that, we need to get to that right now. So with all that, because there are several things that would need to be discussed by these multi-stakeholders, and those propositions should be acted upon by Parliament, looking at how they get into the budget process, by the minister or the CS giving proper guidelines, because right now guidelines on how to manage those resources and all that are not there. The resources also given to the TSC to ensure that they advertise well and get all our trained teachers. There are many trained teachers who are not employed here or who are employed elsewhere. But when you open this opportunity for them to come, it would be easier for them. So it would be more attractive for them to come in, because they are seeing that you're now seriously reorganizing the sector. And I think when we do that, would be at least we'll be starting to restabilize and refocus on what we need to have in an education process. We would also be requiring, like the grade 7 students. I said these are the students that need constant outreach to be counseled, to be helped to understand why is it that they are the only ones that now are facing a lot of problems. The bitterness that could be boiling up, or they're just still harboring, These students need to be talked to. Our various creative ways and all that. I know there are some schools which they say it religious leaning and all that the counseling from the religious quarters and all. If those are the contributions they're making, yes, let them make them there, but to help these learners understand that we have not forgotten about them. But most importantly, I think a common thread should be about we are trying to do all this so that the education sector being reorganized or transformed should enable us to have at the end of it all a citizen, a confident, well-developed citizen, patriotic enough because they have realized how everybody is working for their own betterment, but very productive, and one that is creative in a way that would be helpful to this country. I think when we redirect ourselves in that manner, and they know that we have owned up, we have accepted that tumewakosea, you do mea culpa for the Catholics, tumewakosea. They know and understand, and they're working with us, and that now we want to work together so that we iron out all the challenges we've had. I think that could be a starting point.
Arnold, what do you think?
I think that we need to start asking ourselves how we leave this particular hole that we find ourselves in. I think I still find that I think unionists saw this thing and we didn't listen to them. Probably they were not the people who were supposed to be at the center of the table, but a lot of the things they spoke about, if I remember, their continuous protestations are the same things we are seeing now. The questions they asked 2 years ago, and that is why when you talk about public participation, what exactly are you talking about when the things I raised in a public participation are now a problem at the end, or rather when you are implementing? Is it really for purposes of just ticking the box that this is the framework and therefore he has to be here? So where are we? I think we've had a problem like this before, maybe not at the same level. I wasn't an individual who could understand how the 844 was done, the changeover was done. But I also remember when Kibaki came in and he was trying to solve the problem of delayed joining of university, the challenges during that particular time. We know people had to wait for 2 years. And we had almost a similar crash and a problem. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the person who held that particular portfolio at that particular time was William Ruto in trying to solve that problem. I am hoping that the lessons he learned then, because as he speaks, you find that this sector is not deficient of people who know what should be done. And that there are lessons that we as a nation have registered. We know they are out there. But how then do we bring the learnings from that particular end to this current situation, especially where there is no dialogue? I feel from what he says that literally there is no talking to each other.
Is that really the issue, Arnold?
I'm saying I feel that
the current situation
the
is
current
that people
situation
are not-
is they are just telling us GSS is stuck. We have done 30,000, and so
we are sending money.
And it's not coming in. So there is no structured way of solving this problem, at least from where I sit. Because so far, other than the task force,
The presidential working party.
Which I've not heard a lot from, even on this particular
They're
matter.
still working. They're still
I know they're still working, yes. But let's say your house is burning and your business was supposed to be a team that takes care of safety. Do you continue working as a house is burning because you are supposed to deliver a report on the safety?
You know,
So-
the problem is, Arnold, even I look at this working party, I'm wondering, should this working party be working now because of the situation we're in, or should a similar working party have been put in place before, so that the discussions we're having now were had then in greater detail before we now get to this position where now we are thinking retroactively and trying to solve a problem that could have been solved before we even put this thing into operation.
Let me ask you a
A
question.
similar working party was established. Okay.
The Elimubora Working Party emerged
Yes.
because of the crisis that you're seeing.
Because of
there.
the issues
the
there.
UASUs that were there, the Kenya Human Rights Commission that are there, the Constitution and Reform Education Consortium. That's a huge consortium.
That's how come
all this. That's why I'm here.
Elimubora working
Yes,
group.
and why I'm saying this is very important. Why? Because we cannot say we've been there, we have said that, now we forget about. No. This is the time that we say, okay, even as much as you are who was that, the one who was in the wilderness broadcasting about the coming of Christ? John the Baptist. John the Baptist, yes. That because I'd already done so I have nothing to do with the current. No. We still require your input now because it could have been frustrated based on other factors. This time now, I think maybe what City is saying is that the working party would not just be sitting and working as normal working party. They should be looking at, there's a crisis, let us redirect ourselves there, even as much as we have, these are the TOs.
But my issue is, even as this working party is working, even as the Elimubora working group was working, there was a Fatuma Chege team.
Yes.
That was also working. It was a working group on the transition to CBC.
There was a working group, actually,
Okay.
that transition from the Professor Douglas Odhiambo working team
Working
and all.
team.
There are many of such. But you see, they're discordant with this, with which they are being brought into the picture. In fact, they're not even being brought into the picture. The doses for treatment that the current ministry leadership is giving is to tell you that we have sent the money, because that is not going to fix anything. In fact, it will bring more problems. Two is telling you we have posted the teacher. That is not going to solve anything, and we know it. I think that would be like the painkiller, but it's even inadequate to kill any pain.
My issue is it's actually ignoring. When you move from one to the next,
Yes.
it's not like the other one was made up of imbeciles and nincompoops who were not
It's very, very
thought.
competent people.
So what was the work that was being
Let me
done
tell
by
you,
the
I've attempted to go. I've revisited those past presidential working parties and the task forces, the commissions, and all that. You'll read those things and you start wondering, how come nobody paid attention to some of the elements in there? It is because maybe I think they were done to calm the temperatures at the time, and after that, then we moved on with the business as usual.
See, that's what I'm asking.
Which becomes problematic.
Did we really move on? Because if we're still exactly where we were with all these working parties and the workforces and task forces, and we're exactly where we were, have we actually moved?
I wanted to respond to you by asking another question and probably ending this conversation on a not so good note. Have you realized that every time there is a new county government, any new county government, I will actually...
We started a task force to look at the
pending bills.
Yeah, pending audit pending bills.
To audit pending bills. And this is a government... The systems that actually accumulated this are the same. We are using the same Public Finance Management Act, the same Public Procurement and Disposal Act. The frameworks are the same. But a governor comes in and he acts as if he's landing from heaven.
And creating
and he says that system. I need to look at everything before I am going to pay. Aren't you seeing that what we are doing here, the current task force, is doing something akin to auditing?
The same. Exactly the same.
It's doing a similar process.
And intentions are the ones that keep on re-emerging here.
Yeah.
And I think for as long as we, they say the game of musical chairs, for as long as we'll be playing that, we'll not fix it. And that's why, for me, I still come to the bottom line, where we are at. Let the public not be deceived that the ministry is fixing it by telling you that we have sent money. In fact, maybe in a few months' time, you'll realize that some schools will not have received even the money that we are talking about because it's not being fixed. So let us own up and come to an agreement.
Kama hakuna pesa ya mshahara.
That we want to now deal with it in a decisive manner.
There's a waiting system. How Treasury works out.
Arnold, you know this. We don't agree.
Counties 4 months. Mshahara 11 days. Education 2 months.
Education is a priority.
Wacha tumalize.
Education is a
Wacha
priority.
tumalize. Arnold, thank you very much for joining us today. Arnold Maliba is a public policy specialist, analyst. He's been our guest host. Thank you very much for joining us today, Arnold.
So much, Eric.
Come again soon. And Boaz Waruku is an education expert with the Elimubora Working Group.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Situation Room today.